In this video, the goal is for you to successfully complete a hypothesis The goal of this video is for you to successfully complete an hypothesis test using the t-statistic on your own. So if you haven't already done so, go ahead and pause the video, complete the student-led example, and then come back to the video if you get stuck or when you're done to make sure that you've done it correctly. So first we're going to need to state the null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis and select an alpha level. Then we'll locate the critical region using the t-distribution table and degrees of freedom. We'll calculate our t-statistic, and we'll make a decision regarding the null hypothesis. So to state a null and alternative hypothesis, we need to have an example. So our example is that Ackerman and Goldsmith in 2011 found that students who studied text from printed hard copy had better test scores than students who studied text presented on a screen. In a related study, a professor noticed that several students in a large class had purchased the ebook version of the course textbook. For the final exam, the average for the entire class was a mean of 81.7, but the N of 9, so the 9 students that used the ebook, had a mean of 77.2, with a standard deviation of 5.7. Can he say that the students using the ebooks had significantly different scores at a 5% significance level? Now, I think I've changed everything in the different places, but originally this number was wrong. It was a 7, and it should be a 9, so I believe I've changed it on everywhere it needs to be changed. And this should say different because we're doing a two-tailed hypothesis test. Later, you'll do a one-tailed hypothesis test with the same example, and that word will be changed. So let's look at the important information here. We know that the average overall for the class, so we'll say our population mean was 81.7. We had an N of 9, and that their mean, which should actually probably be a big M instead of a mu, was 5.7. We'll just change that there. Okay, so let's state the null and alternative hypothesis. So here I've listed the important information, and you can see now that this value is referred to as an M, and it's been changed on the handout as well. So we want to say this is our population mean. So our null hypothesis is going to say that the mean of the ebook users, the new population, is the same as our population mean. The alternative hypothesis would say that the new mean for that group of ebook users is not equal to, it's not the same as the population mean. Now we want to set an alpha level, and the example said we were going to use a 5% significance, which means we have an alpha of 0.05. We're doing a two-tailed test, and we have a sample of 9. And this should say degrees of freedom. So our degrees of freedom are going to be n minus 1, or 9 minus 1, which equals 8. So we need to go to our table and find the critical t. So we're looking for that critical t with the degrees of freedom equal to 8 and an alpha level of 0.05. So we're going to go to this table and we're going to look up that degrees of freedom of 8. So we'll leave it down here so we can see the top. Degrees of freedom of 8. So I'll highlight that here. And we said the two tails, the combined proportion is 0.05. So that gives us an alpha of a critical t of 2.306. So the critical t, we said, was 2.306, and we got that by using our alpha level and our degrees of freedom and looking at that t distribution table. Now we need to calculate the t statistic. So in order to do that, we have to have some formulas. So our T formula is that sample mean minus the population mean over our estimated standard error. And we also need to know this formula. Our estimated standard error formula is standard deviation over the square root of our sample size. So from the previous slides, I'll tell you that our standard, so we'll do this calculation first. Our standard deviation was 5.7, and our sample size was 9. That's going to give us a value of 1.9. We then plug that into here. Our sample mean was 77.2 minus our population mean of 81.7 over our estimated standard error. That's going to give us a value of negative 4.5 over 1.9, which gives us a value of negative 2.37. So now we need to make a decision. So our critical T was 2.306, and our calculated T was negative 2.37. So if we come out here, we think about our distribution, we have two critical boundaries, one being positive 2.3 and the other one being negative 2.3. 2.37 is going to fall just a little outside here. It's still in that critical region, so we reject the null hypothesis. In other words, those students that use the ebooks had a significantly different test score than those in the overall class.